Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima here on Crash FM. Man, that still remains one of the best intros to a racing game to this day, doesn't it? Once again, hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out, well, not just Burnout 3. You see, I've actually been writing an article recently about Burnout as a series, and I was basically going through the entire series and playing it. And while I didn't record video footage of all of it, I did record video footage of some of it, but most of it wasn't that good. So basically, I finished writing that, and now we're just gonna ramble a bit about the entire series while playing through Burnout 3, because, well, it just seems like a good idea to me, alright? I don't think I have any other reason, it's just, I feel like doing this, so I'm gonna. That, and I'm basically really stretched for videos at this point. So, there's a decent amount of stuff you can fill around with here. You can see how many cars you've got, all the different things like special event postcards and all that you get for gold medaling special events. Your records for things like best laps and takedowns on certain levels. Nothing particularly out of the ordinary, just all the basics, being able to save and load your profile. Some basic settings, nothing too far out of the ordinary. This is a PlayStation 2 game after all. Notably, you can turn DJ Striker off, which some people might actually appreciate. I usually keep him on for the nostalgia factor, but it's pretty understandable why you'd want to turn him off. I always liked the EA Tracks stuff though, because it gives you a fair amount of options on what you want to do as to what songs you want on, what songs you want off, and whether or not you want to play them in a row or not. And it gets even more in-depth in the sequels. Like, you get stuff like being able to make it so that only certain songs are played during events, which is actually a really nice touch. And this is the PlayStation 2 version, so it does have the Need for Speed Underground 2 demo on it. This is being emulated, by the way. I'm emulating this on the software renderer on nearly the latest version of PCSX2, so no multiplayer or anything like that, but we can still play the game pretty well, and it's actually really well presented. There's not even anything in the way of, like, what's the word, of interlacing, because this game runs at 30 frames a second, so you don't need it, which is wonderful, because it means the game looks its absolute best. You can't run it on the hardware renderer though, which lets you turn the internal resolution up, which kind of sucks, but that's just kind of what happens with games like this. So, events are sorted by class, so at the moment we're in the coupe class, and you pick your car depending on what class you're in, more or less. You unlock them as you go on. Beat events, get cars, pretty simple stuff really. The more overall takedowns and overall burnout points you get, the simpler cars you get. Like, usually you'll get one that has, like, the best level of speed for that tier just by earning burnout points, and you usually get plenty, so it's fine. Of course, we have to play Road Rage first. It's always been my favorite ever since I played Burnout 3 as a kid. Literally just cars swarm the track, and you have to try and hit them. So, for those of you who've been living under a rock or you're too young to know about Burnout, Burnout is an arcade racer that started on the PlayStation 2, had most of its entries on the PlayStation 2 in fact, had one good entry on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 that actually got remastered last year, Probably should have taken that opportunity to talk about it, but I didn't. I'm not entirely sure why, if I'm being honest. And then it just kind of faded into obscurity because, wow. Then it just kind of faded into obscurity because the developers eventually went on to work on Need for Speed, then split into like 3 different studios. It's all just kind of a cluster. So I said I was going to talk about the entire series. You get the general idea at this point, so... Here's the thing, Burnout 1 is actually really different in comparison to basically any other game after it. It's more like an arcade racer in the style of Daytona USA. It's entirely focused on the racing, right? So you do basically just have to get to the end. There's no car combat, as you can see like here in Burnout 3, which I find to be a... Wow, really? Man, that guy was suicidal. But yeah, there's no car combat. It's basically just straight up arcade racing, which is a little odd. And the other downside to it is that it feels nothing like Burnout. The cars go all over the place. They aren't very pleasant to bollocks. They aren't very pleasant to drive. They have next to no weight, especially when you collide with another person. It feels like you're pushing paper mache across the track more than an actual car. And it just makes the game not that much fun, because the driving physics aren't really that impressive. So, it makes the game surprisingly hard to get through. Combine that with the fact that you can still crash, and there are still plenty of fancy-looking effects they got going on. Man, that guy was a bitch. Silver medal, I'll take it. You can still crash into other cars, but the traffic is actually randomized. The fun thing about Burnout 3 onwards is that the traffic is actually preset, so that it's designed in such a way as to not be overly frustrating. But in Burnout 1, since it's random, you have this annoying tendency to just get the shit kicked out of you by the random traffic patterns. And you have really bad rubber banding too. Like, it's the worst rubber banding I've ever seen in a racing game, if I'm being perfectly honest. If you get in a crash, the only way to make sure that the rest of them just don't fly past you is to... Ooh, Eliminator. The only way to make sure that the rest of the pack doesn't fly right past you is to try and crash every other car on the track in a specific way so that the entire road is taken up and they'll just blunder right into it. It's really unsatisfying as a result, because you have to do, like, they're not like Grand Prix. It's like a list of races you have to do, and you have to get a certain position. And they actually have arcade kinds of continues, which is really weird. As in, when I say arcade kinds of continues, I mean, if you don't come like 3rd or 2nd, you have a limited amount of retries, and if you run out, well, that's it. You have to start the entire thing over again. So dealing with all of those things, the unsatisfying driving physics, the fact that I am not having any luck today, am I? Well, at least I got that. Yeah, the fact that you have to deal with all of that, plus the fact that the car physics are unresponsive. There is also the Burnout system, which I admit is an original idea. So the original boost system in Burnout didn't work anything like Burnout 3, where you earn it by doing... Well, you do earn it by doing dangerous driving, pretty much all the time, but in order to actually use your boost, you have to fill up your boost bar completely, and this lets you fire away on your boost. You can't use it at any other point before that, right? So that's one mark against it. The second mark against it is that you earn boost so slowly, and whenever you crash, you lose it almost completely. So you find yourself in this really annoying situation where if you crash enough times, you'll never get the boost in the entirety of the race. Legitimately a massive pain in the neck. Like me consistently crashing. I can't seem to get any luck today. Come on. It's also not helped out by the idea that when you... come on, brain, work with me here. It's also not helped out by the fact that you can earn extra boost by burning out, which is holding the boost button and not letting it go for the entirety of the boost bar. Wow. Terrible time for a belch there. But here's the thing about burnouts. When you successfully do a burnout, which is using the entire boost bar in one go, they only refill it halfway. So even if you manage to get a burnout going in a race, you'll probably only get, I don't know, one extra boost, maybe, if you're lucky. So the entire system just feels a bit slapshod. The only real upside to the first Burnout game is that it looks nice, the soundtrack is okay.
Dude, I salute you.
And the crashes look pretty cool. That's pretty much all I got, if I'm being honest, on the original Burnout. It's just not that fun. You get all the cars straight away as well, which I find to be a bit strange. Well, not all the cars. You get some of them right away, but they're sorted by difficulty, and there's basically no reason not to go to the muscle and stick with it, because it's the fastest car in the game that you get from the start. It's got weird handling, but like once you get used to the handling, it's actually a pretty good car, so there's no reason to go for anything else because they're just slower. I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's freaking weird. You can unlock new cars by going through head-to-heads. There we go, there's a signature takedown. But the head-to-heads are also just frustrating because they run on the same rules, the same arcade timer, well, you don't have like limited continues, you can do them at any time, but it's still just frustrating to me personally. So yeah, for as much as I like Burnout 3, and as much as I can't stop crashing into random cars, I didn't like Burnout 1. Now, admittedly, Burnout 2, with the subtitle Point of Impact, was way better about most of this. It still doesn't introduce the car combat that we all know and love, but basically everything got tuned up. The cars feel a lot better on the road, and it doesn't feel like that they're walking on air and just generally not fun to drive. They're way better. They're way more responsive. They can drift better, they can corner better, it doesn't feel like they're going all over the place, and there's actually a fair bit of weight in colliding with other people and trying to get them into cars. The soundtrack is better, the track layouts are better, you don't have to worry about the stupid timer anymore, which I absolutely love. You don't have to worry about arcade-style continues, because the event system is basically just, you know, Grand Prix, individual races, and not much else, which is fine. And they even introduced Crash Mode. It's a pretty bare bones Crash Mode in comparison to Burnout 3's. But I'm really not lying when I say they improved literally everything about it. It's just a much better game in the grand scheme of things, Burnout 2. Not to mention, Burning Out is actually not only a lot easier. Oh look, we've unlocked the Grand Prix for the Super event already. Is there nothing else I can do? Alpine Expressway.
Once again, this is Crash.
Oh, it's just a regular old race in the Coupe series. We'll take it, sure. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about Burnout 2 either. It's the same sort of thing with the cars. You unlock them, some of them are better. And you can race with pretty much all of them. But that's not a big deal, because at least it means that you feel like you're making progress, and you don't have like the best car immediately, except it handles like crap, so you just kind of have to get used to it. Then you don't want to have to get used to anything else because it's all so strange. But hey, it's a minor thing, and considering all the improvements they made to Burnout 2, I'm willing to take it. it still amuses me to hear the story about how Acclaim wanted to market Burnout 2. Now, these are people who are pretty infamous for making ridiculous, like, advertising campaigns. Like, they tried to buy out space on gravestones for the second Shadow Man game. They tried to convince someone to name their baby Turok because they were advertising Turok, I think it was Evolution at the time. You know, I wandered right into that one. That one was entirely my fault. Nice. And they had half-naked strippers in BMX XXX, which was originally supposed to be a Dave Mirra BMX game. Mirra being an old BMX like superstar, think Tony Hawk levels. And he got try that again. He got so pissed off with this that he basically insisted that he be taken off the game, which is not the best way to go about it. But admittedly, the Burnout 2 one topped all of these. They offered to pay people speeding tickets if they sent them into the Acclaim offices. But trust me, that one disappeared real fast. They could not do that. Like, video games are not real life, kids. That could have gotten someone killed. I swear this is true, by the way. It sounds like an urban legend, but it actually did happen. It was amazing. But yeah, Burnout 2 was interesting. It was basically a straight-up improvement in every way, and most people probably would have been like, oh, they're just going to make Burnout 3 and it's going to be the same sort of thing, but they're going to tweak it up a little bit more. Oh, for God's sake. Can't catch any luck with these damn traffic cars, can I? I appreciate how they give you unique names for every kind of crash you can get in, though. That's always impressive. They basically could have been like, okay, here's Burnout 3, it's basically Burnout 2 again, but we tweaked it even more. Is that really the finish line? That was absolutely the finish line. Let's try that again. I feel like I can do better than that. And I've still got plenty more to talk about. They could have basically made Burnout 2 Plus for Burnout 3 and everyone would have been happy. But for some reason, and I'm not entirely sure why, I'm guessing someone was playing around with the physics model for Burnout 2, managed to tweak something and was like, okay, I need to show this to the rest of the studio. Or something like that. Because who would have thought they'd come up with one of the best arcade races of all time from Burnout 2? Like, even looking back at Burnout 2, with how enjoyable a game that is, having this come out of it is impressive. Man, that takedown saved my ass. No, it didn't. God damn it. Didn't get any time to weave my way out of that one. That kind of sucked. Man, it looked like I was through that. Come on. I'm having no luck today. I'm usually better than this, but... well, this is the thing about me recording videos. As soon as the camera goes on, I become incredibly incompetent. What? Great, I just crashed into the guy that I took down. Wonderful. Anyway, the fact that Burnout 3 came out of Burnout 2 is just incredible in a lot of different ways. Mainly because it's an EA published game, and now everyone who's watching this video who actually gives like the remotest of a damn about video games knows why EA creating something good is impressive, even on its lonesome. But apparently, back in 04-ish, when they were working on, well, just a couple of things, Criterion were apparently approached by EA to do a couple of things, including a Skate or Die reboot. What? Okay, come on, that one was not fair. You could not see that car to save your life. Die. Yeah, apparently they were working with EA on a couple of things, including a Skate or Die reboot, which is a name I haven't heard, like, in years. And the whole thing fell apart. Criterion got a little pissed about it, because apparently they put a lot of work into that project, and, you know, if they did, I don't blame them. It's EA. But then, basically, in E303, the EA president of Worldwide Studios went up to Criterion and said, hey, we really want to make a game with you. And Criterion, basically having been shafted at least once or twice at this point, said something along the lines of, you know what, alright, we'll make a game with you, but it has to be something we want to make, and you get no creative input whatsoever. Imagine doing that to EA these days, they'd flip, and don't give me that Apex Legends bullshit. There is absolutely no way Apex Legends was allowed to be made, just in general, right? By, you know, just the general desire of the thing. But, bloody BR is the big thing for the entire thing right now. Or at least it was a year ago. But anyway. Yeah, they got to make the game they wanted. And they did. They made Burnout 3. And I just gotta say, Burnout 3 is such a massive difference. Like, you still earn boost the usual ways by doing dangerous driving, but just by shifting a little bit of focus towards car combat, it's created this absolutely fantastic mix of combat and racing, metal warfare versus high-speed debauchery. It's the absolute perfect blend to give the game a lot of replayability. It got that mix right. Burnout 2 was pretty heavily focused on the racing, Burnout 1 even more so, right? So they were doing a decent job there, but they just added the absolute right amount of spice in terms of the car combat to not make it feel like, you know, just arbitrary or just pointless. No, the mix is perfect. And I don't know how they managed to do it. I'm half convinced that it was an accident. I'm legitimately convinced that it was an accident that they managed to get the mix this close and this right. But, well, honestly, we'll never know. It's been like 15 years. There's probably no one around left to ask. Not entirely sure what happened there, but we took out like 4 cars in one go, so I'm not entirely sure the game did either. But there's so many other little tweaks to Burnout 3 as well, which makes it just... it makes it just perfect. Here's the thing. So, in Burnout 1 and 2, you did get those bonuses for dangerous driving, near misses, overtaking, not overtaking, being on the opposite side of the road, you know, all of that sort of stuff. They even added, like, crash escapes in Burnout 3 where you narrowly avoid wreckage, right? But in Burnout 1 and 2, they were a little bit iffy. Sometimes they were a little hard to trigger. It wasn't massively an issue, but it was still just that little bit weird. Just that tiny bit strange, right? In Burnout 3, though, they got it perfect. And I'm not using the word perfect lightly. I mean, they literally got it so on the nose that it is natural just to feel out where everything is. When you play a game of Burnout 3 and they tell you, okay, here's how you earn boost. You miss cars narrowly, you drive on the wrong side of the road, you go through crashes, you do, like, car combat with other people. right?
Beat you to it. Never mind.
But all of them are down to the wire. You can feel them out the first time you pick up the controller. The game is just so well balanced in that way that it's just unbelievably impressive just how well they managed to do it on the PlayStation 2. We're talking about the PlayStation 2. They didn't have much horsepower on this thing. They had a fair bit, don't get me wrong, but considering they managed to get everything just so down to the wire is unbelievably impressive. They clearly spent a lot of time. Like, they had a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? They had a lot of time. They'd worked on Burnout 1 and 2, and admittedly it did also get a bit of a boost from 1 to 2, but to see it become absolutely pixel perfect to the point where you can feel it out the first time you pick up the controller is something really special. It's something that people have trouble getting right. I guess I have to do the Grand Prix now, don't I? Alright, let's do the Grand Prix. Do I have any, yeah, we'll use this card just for a change of pace. The fact that they got it so perfect is just impressive. It's something the developers today even have trouble with. Something about... It reminds me of the development of Super Mario 64, where they basically spent the first year making sure Mario felt right, you know? They put him in a room, they gave him some obstacles, and they fiddled. For a year, they fiddled until they were absolutely sure that it was right. And it feels like Burnout 3 went through the same process. They were close, they just needed to make sure that it was absolutely correct. And they did. And it's wonderful. I don't think there's, like, even Forza Horizon can feel a little bit, like, too generous from time to time. Burnout 3 is perfect with what it lets you get away with what it thinks you've done. And, like, in a game that's moving at this kind of speed, on the PlayStation 2, is just incredible. I still think to this day, that's the main reason why Burnout 3 is so well done. They got everything so down to the wire that it's easy to pick everything up just by picking up the game and going for it. In a game where you can move at 175 miles an hour and it feels like 175 miles an hour. I probably sound like a raging fanboy, but that's just really what I think. They got it absolutely right. And you know they got it absolutely right because for the next, like, 3 games they put out, they used the exact same system and nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit that they used the same systems for basically all of the dangerous driving because it just worked. It absolutely just works. But of course, that wasn't the only set of improvements they made to Burnout 3, of course. Sharp eyes among people who've played Burnout 2 and then Burnout 3 will notice they actually cut the frame rate for Burnout 3 in half so they could fit more graphical effects on screen. The funny thing is though, even after coming directly from Burnout 2 to Burnout 3, I can't feel the difference. I mean, in the actual, like, controls and responsiveness itself, like, I could probably notice the frame rate dips if I looked hard enough, but man, this is a game that makes good use of a lower frame rate. They do a really good job of still making it nice and smooth. The game itself just also looks really awesome at the same time because it is still legitimately one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 2. They pushed that renderware engine that they used for this to its limit. And fun fact, for those of you who have been watching this channel for years, renderware is the same engine they use for Persona 4 Golden. I'm not even kidding. It's the same engine that powered all the Burnout games. Also powered Burnout 3, Burnout Revenge, Burnout Legends, and Burnout Paradise. Which makes it all the more disappointing that they never actually put a Burnout game onto the Vita. They put a BSB game onto the Vita, which was like Burnout, but you still have to go through a lot of hoops to get it, and sometimes the emulator crashes if you're unlucky, but Well, they did. But yeah, there's so many other improvements. Yeah, it looks amazing. The soundtrack is actually really good. And this is back when EA tracks didn't feel like they were just pandering to the widest available market. Someone clearly had a good amount of taste going into this game. So, when Lazy Generation starts, as you boot up the game for the first time, and as you boot up the game after a long day at school or a long day at work, and you just want to spend a night beating the crap out of other cars, Lazy Generation is perfect for that opening salvo. Not to mention, it's a mood. And of course, you've got Crash mode, which I'm going to have to swap to eventually, but I've still got plenty to talk about, so we might as well just keep going. Oh, guy's going to put me straight into that corner, and yeah, need to put in a lot of effort to get out of it, and the other guy's going to, yep, there he is, he's going to zoom right past me, isn't he? Oh, no, I managed to get away. There we go. But yeah, there's Crash mode, which... The thing about Crash on Burnout 2, while it was... Yeah, I just wandered straight into that one. That one was stupid off me. The thing about Crash mode in Burnout 2 is that it was actually quite simple. You only had 15 levels to play on for one thing, which, like, why? Only 15? I mean, the Xbox and the GameCube versions went up to 30, but still... You've got to admit, that's a bit low. This game gives you 100. Not to mention they updated the mechanics a bit so that there are score tokens that you can find around the place, and you can pick them up for things like cash multipliers, just cash boosts, and, you know, the general sort of score boosting stuff. Not to mention Crash Breakers, which is literally just you pressing a button and you can explode, which is awesome. But it gives that mode just that little bit of extra challenge that it needs. Because Burnout 2's Crash mode, it wasn't bad, but it was lightweight. It was basically just crash into as many cars as possible, except you lost control of your car after the first crash. So you basically just ended up trying to get a good first hit in and then seeing where the wind took you, a la Angry Birds. But in Burnout 3, with the ability to not only explode on demand, but to be able to control yourself in the air thanks to impact time, which is also available in regular races and stuff, it isn't anywhere near as useful, but it still lets you get that one extra takedown, which will prevent you from losing your boost at the very least. Yeah, it was still just that little bit, odd, right? Just that little bit bollocks. Yay, after touch. I didn't even try for that one. Sorry, my brain is just losing it at the moment. But yeah, with the addition of all these new mechanics, it makes it more into a little bit more of a puzzle, but a little bit more engaging at the same time, because you just find yourself thinking, okay, how am I going to cause the maximum amount of damage while also ending up in all these extra positions I need to be in order to get the most money? It gives you just that little bit of reason to come back and replay for those goals, especially since there's unlockable vehicles for Crash mode now, like a lot of them. So it gives you a couple of reasons to keep coming back and going for high scores. You know, thumbs up. I'm not going to argue against that in the slightest. Oh no. Oh no, he's right behind me. Where is he? Come on, impact time. Where is he? Give me luck. That's a negative. I'll take second. Although I still do need to come first in the next race.
Six drivers, a set of races, it's race
Not to mention the online multiplayer. I never got to play the online multiplayer, so I have no opinion on it. Although you did have the ability to do online road rages. So, you know, it's basically godlike. Not to mention team road rages. Which sounds even more godlike. I wish you could... Oh, Jesus. Man, he's really trying. So yeah, Burnout 3 is still a masterpiece. It's the reason why I picked it for this video. It's just because it's just so good. Like, this game came out in like 2004. It was made in under a year, which I'm still amazed by, considering that Burnout 1 and 2 apparently only had development times of about a year, and it had way less than this game does. Like, this game got way more, like, tracks and crash intersections, and it's just got more of everything, which is why I'm so impressed. And it's all backed up by the tones of DJ Striker, who will not stop interrupting the good songs on the fucking radio. I did not remember him interrupting this much when I played this game back as a... God damn, really? That's the second time I basically have been able to see a goddamn car. There we go, aftertouch. Sorry, bud. You have to die. Yeah, I do not remember DJ Striker being such an interrupting walrus in the original version, but I guess he was? I guess he is. Thankfully, they give you the opportunity to turn him off, but I'm keeping him on for nostalgia's sake. I do appreciate some of the tips he gives out. He gives you hints on what some of the signature takedowns are in areas when you're passing through them, but again, he has this annoying tendency to interrupt you in the middle of any kind of race with idle, pointless chit-chat that is completely unrelated to what you're doing. So, not great. It's not a Grand Theft Auto PS2 era radio station where you get like an hour or two worth of unique segments. Not to mention like proper introductions to like songs and such. No, it's just him coming on, waffling on about how you need to cause more damage because this is like the car races paradise world where nobody's ever punished for causing massive pile-ups in the middle of a highway. But whatever. It's a minor thing and you can turn him off, and the soundtrack is still a really good set of choices. Like, seriously, EA tracks used to be a really good sign for game soundtracks, man. Like, I didn't have that many games with them, but the few that I did were always bangers. Like, nothing that felt out of place. So, you know, it's great. It still remains a masterpiece to this day. Burnout 3, at least, not DJ Striker. DJ Striker's actually a real radio personality, by the way. That kind of surprised me. Like, DJ Atomica in Paradise City is definitely not, and I got the two confused because they sound very similar in their voices, but no, DJ Striker is an actual radio personality in the United States, which is kind of surprising. I wonder what he's doing today. It's been 16 years, he's probably not up to the radio stuff anymore. But anyway, it took off like wildfire. It sold millions of copies. Is the game most people started Burnout on, and that was the game I started Burnout on.
You're back with Crash FM. The valley floor looks like,
and it remains one of the best arcade races to this day. And I'm playing this in 2020. This game came out in 2003, and you could literally just like increase the internal resolution of this game. Like, make it so that it outputs in, like, 4K, and put it out on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and it would still be accepted. Everybody would still love it. Because it's just that good. They got it right. It's so well done that it's lasted tests of a decade of other racing games coming along trying to steal its thunder, and all of them are crashing into walls and cars miserably like I've been for the past 35 minutes. And I just can't help but think, like, why not? Why wouldn't they do that? You'd think they'd want to. You really think... You'd think they'd want to, but apparently they don't.
This is Crash FM, and it's...
And I don't know what to tell you. It's so dumb. Like, why does EA not want to remaster one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time.
I just heard the motorists complaining.
It's so bizarre. But anyway, they gave it a year after Burnout 3 to work on 2 more games. One of them is the one that I have the most like fond childhood memories of, because I played it an absolute ton. I got it like the day I got my PSP. And that's Burnout Legends, which is basically it's basically Burnout 3, but on the PSP. And that's great. Like, the Burnout Legends, it's basically just like a bunch of tracks and cars from the first 3 Burnout games. But it's all on the Burnout 3 engine. And it's the same sort of like World Tour style of things they got going on, right? Where it's the same sort of World Tour sort of thing going on where you get series of cars, certain tracks and things, you know, it all works the same way as Burnout 3 does, just on a less in-depth menu. And you only get like 4 cars overall in the race of ones instead of 6. And just a couple of other minor things like that. But it is basically Burnout through and through. Well, I completely screwed that one up. Oh, hello. Now I say we give that one another try. And you also had like a bunch of crash intersections as well.
Striker, the ultimate crash worshipper.
Let's take a look at this. So, yeah, you got the boost, you got the ramp, and you got 2 times crash breaker, heartbreaker, and then times 4. So they're making it really hard to get all of it at once, which is a interesting concept. But yeah, it was using Burnout 3's engine, it was using renderware, and it looked so good. Like, PSP title, sure, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being a PSP title if you look good. And Burnout Legends looked great. It had all the modes, it even had Pursuit mode, which actually got dumped from Burnout 2. How'd I do this time? Bronze. Screw it, we're just moving on. I'm so used to just tapping the X button to go on through. But yeah, it was basically just Burnout 3 on PSP. And it worked great. And it came out the same time as Burnout Revenge, and I still like it better than Burnout Revenge. Just because it did everything Burnout related, from dangerous driving, to crashing, to looking really good, to having a decent soundtrack. Not as good as Burnout 3, but still good enough. I'm not going to say it's a bad soundtrack by any means. I still listen to most of it. Just whenever I turn the game on, of course. I don't have any of it on like my, Damn, I missed the 4 times. There's a dog having a whinge outside. I don't know what the dog's having a whinge about, but he's having the whinge about it, that's for sure. Let's actually let this one play through. Oh man, that did a lot of damage. I appreciate those tuk-tuks though. I'm pretty sure everyone can appreciate a good tuk-tuk being knocked on its side. Just look at all the little pieces. It's an impressive amount of detail. How'd I do? Gold medal, I'll take it. If I'd gotten that 4 times, it would have been a massive amount of cash. But, oh well. Anyway. Yeah, Burnout Legends. Basically just Burnout 3 on PSP with Burnout 1 and 2 stuff. It worked great. It was... There were a few track designs in Burnout 1 that were absolutely terrible because the roads were incredibly thin, the traffic was randomized, and it basically could mean that you had no way to get around crashing at one point or another. The first lap of the Burnout Crash Tour. Interesting, so I guess we have to go back to the United States, huh?
Hey, what's the matter with you? Is your nav system working? I got a chaos theory for you. Slam into a crash junction and rack up as much damage as possible.
So Burnout Revenge. It's hard to talk about Burnout Revenge. So, remember how I said that... Let's give that another shot. God damn. Remember how I said about Burnout 3 that it was a mix of racing and combat, that they got absolutely perfect, they nailed it, and that Burnout 1 and 2 basically had a bit more racing? Well, Burnout Revenge kind of went the opposite way and added in a fuck ton of combat, which is an interesting concept. No, we're trying that again. We're gonna get through this, goddammit.
Silver Lake.
It's an interesting concept to add more combat to Burnout Revenge. And it's basically the same in everything else. I mean, they added a couple of extra things to crash mode, like having to properly start your car so that you got a decent speed off the word go. And, you know, there's a couple of other things like that. But... now that's what I'm talking about. But basically the main thing about it was that they added in a lot more pizzazz when it came to the combat. You could check cars that were coming the same direction as you, so you could run up their asses and throw them around like goddamn pinballs. There were... oh my god, that must have hurt. There's a bunch more effects on screen at any one time. And there's a lot more, like, they definitely do a lot more with the combat. They basically make it so that you get more benefits for going into combat. Which is interesting. The one line that I wrote about Burnout Revenge that I think is most relevant is that if Burnout 3 felt like a battle, Burnout Revenge felt like a war. And if I'm being honest, it kind of gets a bit old, because the way Burnout Revenge works is not only on top of, like, it looks better, it sounds better in terms of, like, the sound effects and the overall, like, audio presentation of the driving. Oh, Jesus. It sounds better in the overall, like, audio effects and the presentation of the driving and all that. But it's all so intense that it all feels a bit... how do I put it? It's all so intense that it feels a bit over the top at times. And it's not helped out by the fact that in every race in Revenge, in comparison to Burnout 3, you also have a little meter that ranks your dangerous driving. And in order to get, like, up to the highest ranks, not only do you have to be doing tons of, like, dangerous driving constantly, but you have to be... you have to, like, win the race and shit as well. It can get really frustrating after a while trying to max out both your star meter while also, like, actually winning the race. Just after a while, it gets really tiring. That seems to be the main thing I had wrong with Burnout Revenge. Man, I really can't catch a break.
It's about causing as much...
and after a while, it just gets tiresome. Having tons of effects, having to constantly be pushing yourself instead of, like, trying to be safer about it, you know? Yeah, I don't even know where I am in relation to like 4 times multiplier. Alright, screw it, we're just gonna let this one be it. I'll just skip it. At least I got a bronze. I'll take a bronze. So yeah, it felt pretty tiring in the long run. There's nothing wrong with it. I will admit that Burnout Revenge is the best road rages have ever been, because you can literally ram into cars and... Let's not do Crash anymore. I think we'll go and we'll go see what those new supercar events are. It's an event, but is it a special event? It's a special event. It's up there.
What's up?
What do we got? It's a burning lap?
Crash FM, man. There is so much going down.
All right.
at the Riviera.
Okay.
My head is spinning.
I guess this is it trying to get us used to how fast sports cars go, but okay. Right. But yeah, it's a little bit tiring after a while, Revenge. And it's clear that... Well, it's not really clear. That feels a little bit unfair to them. I think I'll say that it's a little bit odd that they decided to go in that direction of having it be more car combat instead of trying to perfect the mix that Burnout 3 got so right. But, well, to be fair, with Burnout, especially like Burnout 3, what would you improve of Burnout 3 except maybe making like DJ Striker be just that little bit more aware of his situation and not interrupt every goddamn song on the radio? Like, what would you improve? It's so hard to know what you would even tweak in the Burnout formula to make it work. And this is coming from someone who likes to do like thought exercises on what he would improve on sequels to games and all that. But yeah. This game is so good that it's hard to know where to iterate on it. Neither did they. They took 3 bloody years after Burnout Revenge to, you know, like, make Burnout Paradise. They were clearly a bit, like, well, not so much out of ideas as much as, you know, trying to figure out where they were going. They had a decent grip on the steering wheel, they just needed to point it in the right direction. Anyway, so you've got a few other things that happened in this time, right?
Crash FM back again.
So,
guys, these European
you've got the DS port of Burnout Legends,
How about a nice quiet drive in the country?
which was absolutely atrocious. Never play the DS port of Burnout Legends. It is the worst game imaginable. The physics are broken, the cars are uninteresting. It's at least a decent looking game, but it doesn't even have like the same sort of flair that Burnout is known for. Like that taste of metal that you can feel if you crash and it sends metal fragments right into your screen. It's wonderful. Just even those like little metal, those little flashes of bits of metal just flying across the screen from a crash, they don't even have that in Burnout Legends on DS. It's terrible. There were also some Burnout games on Java, of all things, which I have actually played. I played them while I was working on my Carvey Break project, and they're interesting. I mean, you really didn't have much to work with when it came to the Java platform, so basically getting anything that was even remotely satisfying on that platform was a doozy. And well, it was better than Burnout Legends on the DS. I'll give them that. It was better than that, but not something you should feel the need to track down if you are a massive Burnout fan. The other game that came in between was Burnout Dominator, which came out the year before Burnout Paradise did. Strangely enough, on the PSP and PS2, this is like a year after the PS3 and the Xbox 360 had come out, so it was a little bit weird to see them working on a Burnout game for these platforms well into the new generation, but shrug? I don't know. So, Burnout Dominator It's the opposite of Burnout Revenge, where they actually went back to the original boost system, where if you manage to fill up your boost and empty it all in one shot, you burn out, you fill the meter back up, and you can keep boosting. But not only did they make it even easier than Burnout 2 to do this, with a very obvious and like really well done actually, like on-screen indicator of exactly that, but they also made it so that you didn't have to fill up your boost meter in order to actually boost, but you couldn't empty the entire boost meter, burn out, and fill your boost meter up again unless it was full when you started boosting. So it added a nice little bit of risk reward to the situation, not to mention making things like road rages possible on that system, because trust me, try road raging without boost. Like, it's almost impossible to do. It's almost frustrating to do, actually. It's really frustrating, but yeah, they went back to the old boost system. They actually toned down a lot of the effects and even a lot of the levels. Like, they made a bunch of new levels for it, but a lot of them were really just like, I don't want to call them simple, but it's obvious that they were toned down a bit from Burnout Revenge just to focus a little bit more on the actual racing. And I find it hard to complain. Like, back when I first got Burnout Dominator on the PSP, I didn't like it very much because it didn't remind me very much of the way of how Burnout used to work. But after playing like Burnout Revenge and seeing what came immediately after with Burnout Dominator, I actually appreciate it a fair bit because it's a lot more focused on not only the racing but the dangerous driving, because you've got they actually replaced a lot of events. They have modes based entirely on getting near misses, drifts, burnouts, and all three at once in the form of Maniac mode. So it's a lot more focused on just being a good driver. So when you play a bunch of Burnout Revenge with just how intense it is and find yourself getting weary of it, going to Burnout Dominator and just pulling back to the racing a bit and taking a little bit of a breath of fresh air, really good idea. And I actually appreciate that game a lot more than I used to. Hell, I might actually play it a bit more after I finish up here. Can't do that, can I? I've still got Flashpoint work to do. I've got a ton of... Really? Thank you. I've got a ton of Flashpoint work to do today, so I just need to get this done and rendered so that I don't end up missing out. But yes, Burnout Dominator, really well done. I actually appreciate the fact that it kind of rebalanced it a bit towards racing, just so we got a little bit of both. Like, if you want the mix of two, racing and car combat, go Burnout 3 Takedown. If you want it to be a little bit more insistent on the combat side of things, go Revenge. If you want to be a little bit more insistent on the racing side of things, go Dominator. Like, how often do you get to see 3 games in a series approach it from 3 different angles like that? Like, I'm obviously not counting Burnout 1 and 2, but, like, Burnout Dominator basically ripped the old Burnout engines, the old Burnout 3 and Burnout Revenge engines, so it does feel basically just like those games as well. So, they are basically the same game with 3 different flavors. How often do you get to see a series do that? Not only that, but they did it in the span of 3 years, and still nobody gave a shit. That's the best part. Like, again, this series is so good that when they had 3 games in 3 years that were basically the same, just slightly tweaked, and nobody gave a shit. Think about, like, Call of Duty, for example, and how often people complain about that, and how similar those games tend to feel sometimes. And then look back at Burnout 3, which had like 3 entries in 3 years, and nobody complains about them being the same. It's great. I love it. Man, that's a nice looking crash. But yeah, basically the series was going great. Everybody everybody who played it basically loved it, and like, what else is there to say? They had no idea where to go with it, and I don't blame them. Where the hell do you go? They went open world, is where they went. And that is fantastic. That is just like, it's probably the best thing they could have done, if I'm being honest. Now, a lot of people have a lot of complaints about Burnout Paradise, but Burnout Paradise still remains my favorite game in the series to this day, just because of how free it was. Just how much of a joy it was to explore that open world, to fight your own way through it, to go from one end to the other entirely on your own knowledge alone. They clearly had the right idea going for them. The event design was kind of inspired. Like, I really like the 4-car piper. God damn. I really like the event design. Having 8 points on the map and having to go straight to them. Now, I admit that I can understand why some people would get sick of it, and they probably could have included some circuit races without much problem, and that would have kept more people happy. But I still think it's inspired. Encouraging you to find your own way through the world is still an absolutely great idea, and I wish they brought it back for more Burnout games. And not to mention, having the entire world as your oyster in the middle of a road rage. Literally just having cars swarm in from every direction and just going nuts on the road while listening to classical music, because they decided to do that. They put a bunch of classical pieces in, not to mention the entire soundtrack to Burnouts 1, 2, and yeah, Burnouts 1 and 2 now I think about it. They didn't really put any of the songs from Burnout 3 in, but it was just wonderful. Hearing some Mozart while committing metal warfare around a gigantic city. It's beautiful in a way that Burnout 3, Burnout Revenge, and Burnout Dominator and Burnout Legends couldn't be. Just due to the nature of them being so restricted by their closed circuit designs. Not to mention things like Marked Man, which basically had you be the target of 2 really powerful cars. I always really enjoyed that series of events. That was fun. But there are definitely reasons to dislike Burnout Paradise. I'll name a couple of them now just to tell you that I'm not bullshitting. No crash mode anymore. It was basically replaced by a ragdoll your car at any time mode and just roll down the street, but it basically had no, like, it basically had no replay value because there was no preset challenges. There was basically nothing to keep you coming back. It was just make as much of a mess as you can. And yeah, not really worth the effort. The single player method of making you repeat the same challenges over and over again in order to upgrade your license and get you cars. I can understand why that would be frustrating to some people. And I do think they could have found some ways around it. And I will admit that the open world design doesn't lend itself well to the head-to-head multiplayer component, because you unlock cars as you go, and it's on an increasing tier of coolness, so you do end up eventually getting cars that are just outright faster and outright better. However, once you take those cars online, it meant that someone who had better map knowledge and better cars than you could just flatten you at any time. That also meant that things like cooperative events, they would finish them really quickly. And it was kind of annoying. Plus, you'd often have to go back to the garage in order to swap your car and all that. And I can see that being frustrating if you're in the middle of a head-to-head event online and you have to go and swap your car constantly to make sure you're in the best shape. I can see why that would be annoying. Especially since they introduced what I think is a good system that just needed a couple of tweaks, which is swapping cars and having 3 different kinds of cars cars that work on the old boost system, cars that work on the Takedown boost system, and cars that work entirely by doing stunts, like getting airtime. Cool idea. Just, yeah, a little bit weird that you need to swap out to do things like stunt runs more effectively, but all it needed was a few tweaks. And the online multiplayer was the best in the series, bar none, because being able to go around this open world, find places they didn't even use in the single player, like a giant airport, or a giant parking garage, or the stock car racing track to the southwest, and just running around and doing the massive list of co-op challenges on them was great. Having the head-to-head list of everything from like longest drift to most air to best e-brake turn to everything you could think of was also a really good idea. And I just wish they had the opportunity to do Burnout Paradise 2, because Burnout Paradise 2 would have been the tits. But, as we all know, Burnout Paradise kind of went on hiatus. Burnout in general, I should say, kind of went on hiatus after that. They did give us a fair few bits of DLC, like special cars, Big Surf Island, which was awesome. Although I'm still kind of annoyed that they actually cancelled planned DLC. Like, apparently you was going to be able to go to the moon, you were going to get boats and helicopters, you were going to be able to get... there was also apparently like a crossover planned with Road Rash. If anyone would have been good enough to do a modern day Road Rash, it would have been Revenge era Criterion. I cannot stress that enough. I'm still pissed that never got made. But yeah, it went quiet for a while because Criterion found themselves on Need for Speed. Because apparently EA were like, okay, this is some cool stuff. Now how about you do a... Yeah, this is some cool stuff. Now, how about you do a Need for Speed game with it? And they did. It was Hot Pursuit. And then they did it again. And it was Most Wanted.
His eyes were opened. He prostrated himself.
Both of which are good games, by the way. I'm not saying they're not.
What that means is he got slammed at the
I'm just saying, I got to admit that I was never as impressed with them. Like, Most Wanted almost feels like a sequel to Burnout Paradise because it plays a lot of the same tropes. It plays a lot more with the, bollocks. It plays a lot more with the same sort of setup. Big open world, you can go anywhere, you can do, you can do anything you like, you can get things like speed cameras instead, you can still get the same sort of gates for shortcuts, you can still do, like, it does basically feel like Burnout Paradise with a few tweaks to it. Like, it has proper circuit racing now. But it doesn't have the same arcadey feel. It doesn't have you crashing into everything. It doesn't have all of that. It just has, like, flat racing. And apparently a bunch of people got really upset by this because, man, Criterion kind of got shanked. Because in 2013, 80% of the studio got spun off into Ghost Games, who have been working on Need for Speed games ever since Most Wanted, and there hasn't been a single relevant Need for Speed since Most Wanted. And then there was the founders who went on to make their own independent studio, Three Fields Entertainment, who have then went on to make a few games in the vein of Burnout. The first game they made was a game called Dangerous Golf. Interesting concept. Where you're basically a bull in a china shop, but you're a guy playing golf. And it's got the same sort of Burnout flair to it, but not very many people liked it. Then they went on to make something called Lethal VR, which I actually own. It's basically just like a really simple firing range, but in virtual reality, with like timed challenges and stuff like that. It's pretty good, but it's kind of been outclassed by the fact that Gun Club VR and Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades have so much more in comparison. They usually sell it for like $2, and it's usually worth that price at the very least. Then they made Danger Zone, which was their attempt to recapture the feel of Burnout's Crash mode, but apparently it didn't have very much that was appealing in the way of Burnout's Crash mode. Like, the environments were apparently really badly done, the effects weren't great, you only get one car to play with, and they apparently just aren't that great. Danger Zone 2 was apparently a bit better than Danger Zone 1, but still not very good. Then, in 2019, I haven't actually played Danger Zone 1 and 2, by the way, so I can't comment on those specifically. But in 2019, they released Dangerous Driving, which was basically their attempt at bringing back Burnout 3. I say attempt, and that's what I mean, because, well, they tried. They really did try. Like, I want to stress this. I can't stress it enough. They tried. They really did. But it just doesn't work for a multitude of reasons. Because you see, the longer you play Dangerous Driving for, the more off you realize it is. Everything just feels that slight bit weird. The cars are just that bit weird. They go all over the place. They don't feel like proper cars. Not to mention they look a bit too metal and whatever. The presentation isn't great. It doesn't feel like there's a... Whoops. It doesn't feel like there's enough going on, like, on screen at any one time to justify, like, the cars and what have you. It's not great. There's also a bunch of other things, like the tracks are really uninteresting. They almost feel like they were procedurally generated with the way that they drive. There's not even a soundtrack, like not even like a Burnout 1 style instrumental or a Burnout 3 style EA tracks. No, they make you hook it up to Spotify to get the soundtrack instead. Which is just so bizarre to me. It just feels weird. Does it not feel weird to you? It feels weird to me.
I am Striker on Crash FM, but I know it's not like me to want to give you Burnout. Here goes anyway.
It just, as a Burnout game, it just doesn't really work. They tried, and they're still trying, which is the funny thing to me, if I'm being honest. Instead of like making a sequel to Dangerous Driving where they could fix all the little things that went wrong, including like some... They even list this one on the website, which I found to be a bit bizarre. There's this bug apparently related to performance slowdowns when you're going through a tunnel because of the way the content streaming system works, and they can't actually fix it due to limitations in the engine. You'd think they'd want to like go to a new game so they could fix problems like that, you know? But they just decided not to. And they're still updating the original Dangerous Driving. They're promising updates in 2020. Like, you know, good on them, but I really do think you'd be better off going for a sequel and fixing everything that you didn't get right in the first game, but that's just me. So that's fun. Honestly, sometimes I think it's better for Burnout just to remain not so much obscure, because I mean, Burnout 3 is rated as one of the best games of all time consistently, so to say that it's going to remain obscure is like saying that what else could be named obscure? It's like saying the Medal of Honor is going to be obscure. They did do really well back in the day, but still, I do think it's better just remaining like where it is right now in its gravesite. Like, there is one other game which I didn't mention, which was Burnout Crash, but that doesn't even feel like a Burnout game if I'm being perfectly honest. So, like, even less than Dangerous Driving and Danger Zone, I gotta say. It's disappointing, but considering that EA owns the IP, can you imagine what would happen to Burnout if it tried to make a modern day comeback that wasn't just a remaster of Burnout 3 and Burnout Revenge? Can you even imagine what they would try to pull? I can't, which is why I don't want them to. It's better just to let sleeping dogs lie in this case, I think. Because, well, you got one of the best racing games of all time, two games that are really close to it, but are still enjoyable in their own rights. Burnout Paradise, which is also fantastic. Why would you piss away that sort of goodwill? I don't know. Money. Yeah, that's pretty much the reason, isn't it? Money. Hope you've enjoyed being with me for this hour and 15 minutes I've been ranting to you about Burnout 4. I still think pretty much all of these games are fantastic. Avoid the DS port of Legends, avoid Crash, avoid Burnout 1. Maybe give Burnout 2 a glance if you're generous, but you're better off just playing Dominator in that case. All of these games are still fantastic though, outside of them, and I wholeheartedly recommend them. At least I got that out of my system now. I'll see you all next time.